Namaskar. This is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tidbits on Business and Finance with me. A few days ago, there was a huge fire in the GST Bhavan in Mumbai. This particular building is the headquarters of the GST department in Mumbai, and the most sensitive floors of this building got gutted in that fire. It is the 8th floor onwards in the building which contain extremely sensitive files and data. It contains or houses the investigation wing and surveillance wing of the GST department here. It contains evidences related to some of the topmost GST evaders in this jurisdiction. And those very floors, 8th onwards, are the ones which had a huge inferno and were gutted. Of course, a lot of incriminating evidence certainly got destroyed, and we think that it was no great coincidence. A couple of years ago, a building called Sandhya House, which used to house the investigation wing of Income Tax Department Mumbai, was completely gutted and made uninhabitable. The fire lasted for many hours and it destroyed extremely sensitive files and evidence related to some of the biggest tax evaders, some of the biggest business houses of the country. It is worth noting that these records which got destroyed were primarily on the 4th and 5th floor of that particular building. The 4th and the 5th floor of a building are easily accessible by a snorkel by the fire brigade, and the fire could have been easily doused very quickly, but it continued for many hours and the building was completely destroyed. So was the evidence housed therein. It is worth noting that these buildings that we are talking about are high security buildings under surveillance round the clock, manual as well as by camera. Restricted access is what happens there. Apart from restricted access to these buildings, even movements are restricted and monitored. And it is these buildings which happen to catch fire and get gutted. A few months ago, a building of housing an important government department was also gutted in Delhi. And as we said, we think this is no coincidence. All these fires were witnessed in buildings which involve the interests of extremely vested, big, powerful lobbies in the country. Their evidences that got destroyed were serious, sensitive, and were pertaining to extremely powerful persons with connects in the government. And we think it is no coincidence that these very buildings got destroyed. Why is it not that we approve of fires in government offices, but why is it that we don't see fires in offices of the government like in Ministry of Agriculture or Ministry of Transport or Ministry of Civil Aviation, where you don't have the vested interests of big ticket persons involved who have evaded taxes or who have violated laws in a big way? Why don't we witness fires in those kind of inconsequential government departments in terms of the interests of big parties? The answer is very obvious. And despite the government denying that there has been any big large-scale destruction of evidence in these fires, we think it is to the contrary. We also would like to say that in the case of Sandhya House, for example, it was clearly a fire that needed a huge investigation. It needed a special investigation team to be set up to see how did such a sensitive, prestigious wing of the Income Tax Department get destroyed in a fire. And surprisingly, nothing was done. And if sources are to be believed, the case has been closed saying it was a fire by accident. We think that is extremely unlikely. When we talk of these kind of fires, we actually are talking about a situation where some vested interests have destroyed evidence against them which has been in the custody of government departments. It has very often happened in the past that either files containing sensitive documents against some vested interest, either they were destroyed or they were misplaced or they were never found. It is very often that when there is a case pertaining to a high-ranking person, whether in the government or in the society or in politics, it is very often seen that the responding government department says that the file is not any longer locatable. For all you know, it would have been destroyed in such a manner. Evidence has been destroyed very often in this manner, and the interests of justice have been thwarted. We think that this scenario is changing, and the change has come because of what we would call the electronic mode of governance and filing. For now almost 12 to 15 years, most government departments, including Income Tax, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, etc., they have started a system of e-filing. Everything gets uploaded in an electronic form and not by way of a hard copy. The electronic form is an intangible form of recording data, unlike the hard copies where it was in a tangible form. We are now in a situation where the very recording of data by the government, very keeping of evidence by the government has changed. It has changed from hard copies to soft copies, tangible to intangible. All data that you now file with the government is now in an electronic mode and is stored in servers which actually are beyond destruction in this kind of a conventional manner. Thus, with the advent of e-filing, e-data, e-governance, all those who used to earlier try to steal files, destroy files, fabricate files, manipulate them, or even burn the offices, they are not going to be able to do so. These data that you are now handing over to the government is there in a situation where destruction is certainly not easy, and that is good for law enforcement. Let us see what are the changes that have come by virtue of the fact that data now with the government is increasingly in an intangible electronic mode. Let's see what happens now. Now, with data being in electronic mode, we think it is far more secure and far more safer. It was much easier earlier to probably bribe a peon in the government department and get your file misplaced or get it destroyed. It used to happen a little too often, especially where cases were sensitive and interests involved were powerful. Now, data is secure and it is safe too. Because of this, we think there is bound to be a improved transparency in government functioning. Where data cannot be manipulated, fabricated or destroyed, transparency does come in. That gets to a very important issue that now comes in governance. Earlier, all those who had a fraudulent intent, they could probably get into some kind of a transaction with some corrupt person in a government department and ensure that their matters are hidden away, and wherever they have violated the law, they would go scot-free. There used to be what we would call cozy corners, which were only in the domain of a particular officer, only he had access to it. Now with e-filing, there is no cozy corner available. If you take a department like the income tax department, what comes on the screen of the income tax officer also comes on the screen of all those in the hierarchy above him, leading right up to the CBDT chairman. No cozy corner now left for any of those touts of the system, any of those tax evaders to go and do deals with the wrong officers and hide their matters. That's not going to happen. Because of data being in an e-format now, investigation is easier because every e-data not only is secure, but it also leads to a trail. If you see recent investigations that we are seeing in cases of Diwan housing, ILFS, etc., what we are seeing is that there is a detailed trail available from one document to the other because all of it has been in an E mode and that could not have been erased. So we should expect more better investigation by all the agencies concerned. Very often in the past, the government lost cases in courts because the government department said that the files are not traceable. Now with this, we would want to believe that the government's chances of winning cases, particularly where it has a tenable case, should be much better because those kind of excuses are not going to take place. If at all now in future data does get destroyed, it would not be because of some low-ranking peon hiding a file. It would be because of collusion at the highest level, and that is not really very easy. With data being in this kind of a format, surveillance is better, cross-verification is better. Today, the government departments are able to cross-verify data with one another very easily. Thus, if you have violated one law, let's say if there was a tax evasion, very quickly, authorities related to money laundering, black money, benami, etc. are getting access to the same data to examine whether prosecution and penalty needs to be done under those respective laws also. So, far better surveillance with this kind of e-data coming in the custody of the government. Fraud investigation getting much better, and we would want to believe that would be a deterrent to the committing of these kind of crimes in future. Thus, in the present scenario, with data becoming in an e-format, we think it is good for governance. Ironically, despite this, the government still manages to come out with doctored data regarding all kinds of statistics that we very often note. But then it may come with doctored data with e kind of filing and e data trying to come with the destruction of evidence is not going to take place. Thus, data may get doctored, evidence will certainly not. And we think that's good for enforcement of law in the country. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.